Husband disconnects his dying wife from the machines. Then she whispered few shocking words. After 2 decades of floating somewhere between life and death, Sarah Scanlon is fully and finally awake. Since February, when she awoke from a coma-like state that had kept her silent and unmoving for 20 years, she has undergone surgery on her long unused limbs and has had intensive speech therapy to unlock her long dormant tongue. Her conversations now reveal that she was aware of many of the things going on around her while she seemed to be in a coma. Shortly after she awoke, her father asked what she knew about events that had occurred years earlier. "Sarah, what's 9/11?" he asks. She responds, "Bad, fire, airplanes, building, hurt people." Sarah is not speaking in full sentences yet, and it's still hard for her to move. But her family says it's the same Sarah who left them on a terrible night in 1984, when a hit-and-run accident put her, then 18, in a semi-conscious state. It's almost as if Sarah knew that her life would be interrupted because she made the most of every minute, her family says. She loved life from the very first breath, says her dad, Jim Scanlon. She came of age in the 1980s and was a cheerleader in high school and leader of a dance team in college. Friday, September 21st was the first day of autumn after summer that had seen the U.S. triumph in the Los Angeles Games and Ronald Reagan nominated for a second term. And as that night gave way to Saturday morning, Sarah Scanlon walked out of a party at a local bar, unaware that a new cruel reality was hurtling towards her. It happened just after midnight. Sarah was crossing a street with a couple of her friends when a drunk driver careened out of the darkness and hit her. The force of the impact threw her up onto his car and into the path of oncoming traffic. The driver just kept going. About midnight, the phone rings and Betsy finally answered it, Jim Scanlon recalls. She came back into the room and pulled my big toe and said, "Get up, we've got to get to the hospital. Something terrible has happened to Sarah." I'll tell you, when I was awakened that night, I woke into a horrible nightmare of a new world. Nothing could have prepared the Scanlons for what they saw at the hospital. Their daughter Sarah, the light of their lives and the hope of their world, was gone. What lay on the bed before them was little more than the still-breathing corpse of a young woman. Her face was contorted, her skull was crushed, and her promising life was now shattered beyond repair. I take one look in there and it's just gruesome, Jim Scanlon says. She's horribly mangled, especially in the head because she was hit by a teenage drunk driver, slung over in the path of another car, and that's the one that really got her right in the head. I couldn't handle it. His wife Betsy Scanlon adds, "To the nurses in there I said, when she wakes up tonight, you come and get me. And the doctor told us Sarah's not going to wake up tonight." Jim Scanlon continues, "The neurosurgeon sets us down, darkest day of my life, and said, 'All right, folks, I think I regret saying this, but I think your daughter's going to live, physically, survive. However,' and then he starts to tell us what the head injuries, and I'll tell you, there wasn't any hope in it." Sarah's brain injury was massive. She could breathe on her own, but that was all. There was almost no movement, no communication, no way of knowing what she was thinking or even if she could think at all. Her long days of silence turned into months and years. Jim Scanlon says, "Your emotional state is like the day before a funeral, but you never get to go to the funeral and kind of start working through the process." As the 80s became the 90s, Sarah stayed locked in her solitary world. Her older brother Jim, who worshipped her from the day she was born, felt the bond to his baby sister slipping away. "I gave up hope a long time ago," he says. His father adds, "There were times that would get so grinding I would pretend Sarah was dead." But early this year, when it seemed certain that Sarah was gone forever, something miraculous happened. One day in February, the Scanlons got a call from the nursing home. Jim Scanlon says, "Beth said someone wants to talk to you and she had the speakerphone on, getting emotional. She said it's Sarah and I said, 'Sarah?' And she said hello and I just went numb. I don't remember very much after that." Betsy Scanlon says, "Then I could hear Jennifer in the back saying, 'Tell her what you want, tell her what you want.' And Sarah says, 'I want makeup.'" Jim Scanlon adds, "All of a sudden I began to realize that she wasn't talking about Sarah, she was talking to Sarah. She says, 'You want to talk to her?' And I said, 'Certainly.' And I get the phone and I say, 'This is Dad. Hi, Dad, I love you.'" There was an incredible shock waiting her. A mom in Brazil has been left heartbroken after she woke from a life-and-death coma only to find her mom had run off with her husband. Camila Vanessa Cordeiro de Melo claims she met the man of her dreams when she was 25, who was 10 years older than her, and they fell in love. They married in 2013, and Camila says their son, now 6, arrived the year after following a complicated pregnancy. But her fairy tale life fell apart 4 years later when she suffered a stroke following bariatric surgery to regulate her hormones. At the age of 2017, I needed to have bariatric surgery, Camila told Brazilian news outlet No Amazonas é Assim. The idea was not to lose weight but to take care of my hormonal rates. After operating, I had a stroke and needed to be hospitalized again. But following the surgery, the mom of one slipped into a coma for 78 days and was in intensive care. But rather than her family rallying around her, Camila claims that her mom stole her husband and later married him. During this period, my mother, I swear I can't call her a mother anymore, went to my house to help my husband take care of my son, who at the time was 4 years old, Camila told Marie Claire, according to The Sun. Only later did I learn that in the 4 months I spent in the hospital, much of the time between life and death, my ex had only visited me twice and my mother none. When she woke, Camila's father picked her up from the hospital and delivered the devastating news. His wife was having an affair with her husband. Upon learning of the double betrayal, Camila said she experienced the worst pain in her life. It looked like she was being stabbed in the chest, a mixture of disappointment and disbelief, Camila said of her father when he told her what happened. Camila said she always had a rocky relationship with her mom, who's only 20 years older than her, claiming she started competing with her when she was a teenager. As a teenager around 13-14, my mother started to compete with me, she said. She said that my clothes were better suited to her, that her food was better, nothing I did was good enough. But refusing to believe the situation, she called her mom and confronted her, who told her everything she said was true and she was very happy with her former son-in-law. To add insult to injury, Camila says her mom and ex-husband now proudly flaunt their relationship. I recently learned that my mother is keen to celebrate their relationship anniversary on March 2nd, without even disguising that she started going out with my then-husband while I was in the hospital, Camila said. Camila's mom and her ex-husband later got married, and her son sees his father a few times a week by court order. She is angry her son has to be exposed to the toxic and harmful situation, but she's powerless to change it. But fortunately, Camila has managed to put the heartbreak behind her and has been dating a nice guy for the past 10 months. Rather than fixate on the betrayal, Camila said she now focuses on her dad and her son, calling them loving and perfect. Human beings no acting the same way. A man has miraculously woken from a coma after being cared for by his wife for 5 years. Li Jihua from Jiangyang in Hubei Province, China, sustained serious brain injuries after reportedly being knocked off his scooter by a motorbike in 2013. His wife, Zhang Guihan, subsequently spent almost 2,000 days as his sole carer, sleeping for only a few hours a day between cleaning, feeding, and talking to her husband. During this period, the strain caused Zhang to lose 10 kilograms, but against all odds, Li regained consciousness last year and his first words were, "Wife, I love you." Doctors originally told Zhang her husband may spend the rest of his days in a vegetative state. However, the 57-year-old refused to accept this prognosis and spent every day reading to him and playing his favorite songs. According to Chinese news outlet Pair, Dr. Wang Qing'an said, "These things were very helpful to stimulate his nervous system. When he was taken to the hospital, he was in a vegetative state. He could not respond to anything." Li has remained in hospital since and is undergoing recovery treatment with the help of his loyal wife, who has been assisting him with using a walking frame and massaging him. Li is not able to speak clearly. However, doctors said he had made great progress since coming out of the coma last year. Head nurse Xia Li said, Zhang taught her partner many movements and patiently demonstrated them to him without any complaint. Indeed, after 6 years of tending to her husband's every need, Zhang plans to continue being utterly devoted to her husband for the rest of his life. She said, "I have never thought about giving up. As long as he is alive, I will keep serving him." Hopefully, Li will continue to make progress and will one day be able to talk about this experience of being in a coma for 5 years. The mysterious state was the subject of discussion in a recent Reddit thread in which people who had been in comas opened up about what it is like. One person said, "I was in a coma for about 2 weeks following a cardiac arrest as a teen. I was technically dead for over an hour, in fact. People often ask me if I could hear my family talking to me or if I was dreaming. The answer is no. There is a huge hole in my memory beginning about 2 weeks before the coma through a week after waking up. And waking up is in quotes because I would wake up, ask a bunch of semi-incoherent questions, fall back under, then wake up again and ask the exact same questions in the exact same order. Repeat 6 or 7 times. The coma was not even blackness, it just does not exist. I remember having the hardest time believing it was actually mid-October when the last day I remembered was late September." Another added, "It was really just nothing but black, no dreams, no lights, no voices, just nothing. The chances of someone recovering from a coma largely depend on the severity and cause of their brain injury, their age, and how long they've been in a coma.